the council meeting for Watford Borough Council. For those who are watching via the live stream, my name is Councillor Dawn Allen Williamson, and I'm the chairwoman of Watford Borough Council. Also present today are Mayor Peter Taylor and all other councillors of Watford, unless apology has been received. We are supported today by Dana Nolan, the Chief Executive, Watford Borough Council, Leanne Hounsley, and the Monitoring Office, Dana Nolan, Hannah Norman, the Chief Finance Officer from Democratic Services. I would like to remind all members to stand when they're speaking. If you wish to speak, or when I ask you to vote, please raise your hand so that the officers and I can see you clearly. We have a very busy agenda, so it will help manage the meeting this evening if you indicate at the beginning of each item when asked. If you know you would like to speak, only turn on your microphone when I invite you to speak. When I invite members to speak, I do not expect repetition of previous speakers. Before we continue, I just need to advise that we are not expecting. Therefore, if the alarm sounds, please follow the direction of the Democratic Service manager and leave as quickly as possible and make your way outside by the exit and round by the pond where we will gather and check everyone is accountable for. Do not use the lift. If anyone has any difficulty using the stairs, please speak to the Democratic Service manager. Apology. Any apologies? We have got some apologies. Councillor Hamid, Councillor James, Councillor Martin, Councillor Johnson. Okay, thank you. Any close of interest? Do members have any close of interest? No?
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I've been advised by the monitoring officer that I have a declarable interest so far as the motion relating to renters' rights are concerned. I don't necessarily agree with the guidance I've been given, but just err on the side of caution, I am going to declare that and I am going to withdraw from the meeting. But as I said, I don't necessarily agree.
Any other?
I have other registrable interest for the covenant motion, the faith covenant motion.
Thank you, Councillor Annalise.
I'm Gabriel de Dussa. I would like to disclose interest in point 18 of the agenda as I work for the Watford.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And I work for West Hart Teaching Hospital, therefore I have an interest in running the motion representing the hospital.
Thank you, Councillor Alba. Okay, all interest has been declared. I take it. Minutes. Do all members agree that I signed the minutes for council held on the 16th of July? What's the next? Okay, so official announcement. There's a lot of events going on in the town, and I do encourage members to read the events on the Watford Borough Council website. Oftentimes the mayor also share them. There's a good few, and I'm not gonna read them all out. The most important one, I think, is the annual memorial service on the 10th of November at 3 p.m. at the town hall. There will be again the parade from St. Mary Church. If you wish to take part, Arrive at 2 p.m., please, for tea and coffee and biscuit. I know you like that. At the men CAF. Fundraising. There's a lot of fundraising going on. I have got some. I've done. I'm not going to stay here read it either. I expect you guys to support me and follow me, follow the mayor's website, and you can see what I've been doing. I won't even tell you how much I raised because I want you to follow me. Mayor's report. A mayor report is attached to the agenda. Please, can you raise your hand now if you wish to ask any question to the mayor? I will then make a note of all the members who would like to ask any question to the mayor. You should all read that report. Councillor Nigel. Anyone else? Can you introduce the report, please, Mayor Peter?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just a couple of things to highlight since the report was written. There's been two particularly good pieces of news I want to highlight. The first being that the council successfully has secured £2.4 million from the Heritage Lottery Fund to fund our new museum in the town halls. That's a huge credit to the officers who worked on that. And today we signed the contract with AEG, who will be the new operator of the Watford Coliseum. We'll have world-class performers there next year, and also community groups. It will be a really important part of our town. So again, credit to officers for securing that contract being signed with AEG, who operate the O2 and lots of other fantastic venues both across the UK and globally.
Thank you, Mayor Peter. Councillor Nigel, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. And can I also compliment officers and congratulate getting the certainly the money for the lottery funding for the museum. That's very good. Obviously, Mayor, I note your report on the Watford shopper bus service, which obviously was introduced at the start of the year. Can you let us know how many Watford residents have used this service since the start on, I think, the 1st of January?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. And again, I'd like to pay tribute to Communities First to operate that bus, and I know lots of us have been promoting it. Each month, more people have been signing up to it. I think the latest figure was several hundred people have travelled on it. I know that some residents have really benefited from it. So it operates on Mondays and Tuesdays, goes to different parts of the town on those days. And I would encourage us all to promote that service. I think it's not just about getting people to the shops, but there's a real community created, and people make friendships on it. So it's been successful. I think the latest figure was about 350 people that have used it.
Thank you. Are you happy with the answer, Councillor Nigel?
Yeah. I've got a supplementary then.
Okay.
Supplementary. Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, so clearly we know a service helping our elderly and vulnerable residents is needed, but can Watford Council taxpayers be assured that this has been planned better and is reaching as many residents who need it after the failed Arriva Click policy that obviously finished on New Year's Eve last year, and obviously 1.5 million of Watford Council taxpayers was spent on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I would just say, fundamentally, Arriva made the decision to finish that service. It was money that the council spent, but it was something that I know a lot of residents benefited from. I think the key thing, actually, and it should actually unite both Labour and Liberal Democrat councils, is that we need better bus services. In Watford, it's not just about the shopper bus or Arriva Click, it's actually about having good, regular bus services. Both of our parties want a franchise model. That would mean local councils running buses like they do in London, where they have a much cheaper, more reliable, better used bus service. The other thing to say about, of course, in London, they get £2 billion worth of funding from central government every year for TfL. So we want the powers in Hertfordshire to have better bus services, franchise buses, but we need the money as well from central government to deliver them. And I'd hope that the Labour government would be investing in public transport, because we need better buses for all of our residents in Watford.
Thank you. Item 6. Question from members of the council. No question. Question from member of public? No question received. Petition? No petition received. Urgent business? There's no urgent business. Gambling Act 2005 Policy Review. A report from the License Committee has circulated in the agenda, including the original report to the committee. I invite Councillor Richard to propose, introduce.
Yeah, I'll propose and I'll speak now if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Just a second.
You have 7 minutes, sir.
Okay, yeah. On behalf of the Licensing Committee, I recommend that members approve the draft statement of principles under the Gambling Act of 2005 to take effect on the 6th of January 2025. I'd just like to highlight the new paragraph included regarding the proposed half-year gambling-related harm strategy. This council is a member of the Gambling Alliance, and this strategy and details of all the aforementioned can be found in the agenda details. It is our recommendation this council continues its policy in regard to the non-issuing of casino premises licences. A full and thorough consultation took place with members of the public and interested parties, and I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the licensing team for this and all their continued hard work. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? And thank you. Would you like to speak?
I won't because Richard said everything already.
Thank you. The member would like to speak. Councillor Bell. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you just say how long is this likely to last? Do we have to review this? I should have read that, I suppose. But and is there anything else major that could affect our new gambling policy that's on the horizon, if you like?
Yeah, when it comes in 2026, it will last till 2028. It's constantly kept under review as well, and there is nothing that should really affect it going forward. Nothing foreseeable anyway.
Is there anything else you want to sum up, Richard?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Does the council agree the two recommendations as printed at page 18 and 19 of the agenda pack? The adoption of the statement of principle under the Gambling Act 2005 under section 166 that the council will continue the policy not to issue any casino permission license. All in favor? All against? Anyone? Okay, I think that's carried. Thank you. Recommendation has been carried. Treasury Management Annual Report. A report from the Audit Committee have circulated as part of the agenda pack, included original report to that committee. I am invited Councillor Mark to move the recommendation, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. So this report covers Treasury management, investment and borrowing activity and compliance with the prudential and Treasury indicators contained within the capital and Treasury management strategies as approved by Council in February 2023. The report concludes the mandatory reporting cycle for 2023-24 as required by the CIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management 2021. The reporting cycle comprises the annual Treasury Management Strategy Statement, the mid-year review and the end-of-year reports. This report provides confirmation that the Council complied with legislative and regulatory requirements during the year and sets out the 8 key risks that the Council seeks to manage through its Treasury management policy. The capital investment and financing are key drivers of Treasury management activities. The report sets out the Council's unfinanced capital expenditure was 4.3 million lower than budgeted as a result of changes in the delivery of capital investment programmes. The Council's capital financing requirement, that is the underlying needs Borough to fund capital expenditure, is projected to increase by 15.8 million in the original budget for 2023-24. The actual increase in the CFR for 2023-24 was 8.7 million. The difference to budget of 7 million relates to higher than budgeted repayments of loan to subsidiaries and difference in unfinanced capital expenditure. As a consequence of the lower budgeted capital expenditure and decisions related to investments, external borrowing was below the budgeted position. The Council complied with its limits it set for external debt. The report sets out the Council's position for both debt and investment and covers actions activity taken in relation to the agreed strategies. This information is best understood in the context of external economic factors. At the time of setting the TMSS, interest rate forecast provided by the Council's Treasury Management Advisors indicated expectations that short, medium and longer term fixed borrowing rates would likely peak in the first quarter of 2023. With rates likely to begin falling during the year, it was therefore determined that using short-term borrowing while rates were elevated would offer considerable longer-term savings by deferring long-term borrowing until long-term rates had fallen to affordable levels. In reality, interest rates remained elevated, at times significantly higher than projected, and at no time fell to affordable levels. Short-term interest rates were also above budgeted levels. In order to mitigate the significant cost pressures resulting from high interest rates, the Council took action to avoid taking new long-term borrowing and minimise the use of short-term borrowing. To achieve this, the Council opted to liquidate its pooled fund investments held with Royal London Asset Management. This was possible because the return of those investments was low relative to the cost of new borrowing. In liquidating the pooled fund investments, the Council realised a gain of £1.579 million on the capital value of the investments, which has been returned to the Croxley Park Reserve. As a result of withdrawing from these investments, the Council was able to avoid refinancing £25 million of loans with an additional in-year cost saving of £449 million and contributed an additional £1.92 million of interest income. The Council's remaining investment balances continue to be held in a mixture of bank current account balances, deposits with the Debt Management Office account deposit facility, and loans to other local authorities. In-year investment activity conformed with the approved strategy with one exception, a technical breach of the approved counterparty limit with the Council's own Lloyds Bank, which is Lloyds Bank PLC, for a period of one night in February 2024, when failure of Lloyds Bank online system meant that it was not possible to sell funds committed to be placed overnight in the ABF. Lloyds fully compensated the Council for lost interest and penalty fees incurred as a consequence of this failure. Lloyds have confirmed that the failure resulted from a system hardware fault and was not a result of malware or cyber attack. And finally, despite minimising external borrowing exposures, total interest payable on loans was £2.482 million, exceeding the budget by £0.25 million. This was offset by higher than budgeted interest income resulting from higher than forecast cash balances and the elevated rate environment. Overall, the net budget for interest of £1.682 million was underspent by £0.278 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mark W., I understand you're second. Would you like to speak? Thank you. To sum up anything, Mark? No. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Asif.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think it's important just to realise in both auditing and both in audit and in finance, the importance of scrutiny. And where councils have faced economic problems, whether they are district or county council, one of the major factors has been a lack of scrutiny and a lack of understanding of some members of those particular councils. It's important that we maintain that scrutiny level at this council as well. That there are risks with some of the investments, and that scrutiny will keep, irrespective of who's in charge, the finances on a straight and narrow. That's sort of one of the key points I want to make, and I think the audit committee members are doing that as well, and also on the budget finance. But I just want to make sure that we keep that on the forefront of our minds, to have that constant thing. We've got to scrutinise what we're doing, the decisions, making sure that the taxpayers' money is kept safe like other councils, unfortunately, miss those particular steps. So that's the point I want to make.
Thank you, Councillor Asif. Councillor Mark W., do you want to speak?
I do, Chairman, just very briefly. Treasury management is like the sort of life, the sort of blood system that runs through the authority. You don't see it happening, and if it goes wrong, bits of the body fall off. And it's rather like our blood supply. So it has to be well maintained and looked after and nurtured. And I'm proud to say, both in my time as financial portfolio holder and subsequently, I have every confidence in officers' ability to do that. And they've made some quite radical decisions, as my colleague Mark Hoffman has explained tonight. I think it's worth saying, picking up Councillor Khan's point, that there is good scrutiny at audit. We're very lucky now. We have an independent member who can look at this objectively and sense without any prior understanding. He comes in and looks closely at it. And I'm pleased to say that if you look at the minutes of the audit committee, I asked quite a few questions as well. So I am confident that it's in good shape. And thank you to Hannah and her team for keeping the lifeblood flowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Councillor Mark H., would you like to sum up?
I've got nothing further to add, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Does the council agree the recommendation on page 62 of the agenda pack, the Treasury Management Annual Report noted? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstain? I think that's carried. Finance Monitoring Report, Quarter 1. A report of the Chief Finance Officer has been circulated with the agenda, including the minutes from Finance Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet on the 7th of October, which have been circulated separately. I am invited Councillor Kennedy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I will take members through the financial monitoring position for 24-25 as at Quarter 1. This is the first report of the financial year and focuses on the forecast year-end position compared to the latest budget, which was set in July. As the Chairwoman has already said, this has already been to Finance Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet, so members might be pleased to hear that I'm only going to take you through the highlights. The revenue forecast of 14.683 million is adverse to budget by £57,000, and it is expected that this will be met through the Economic Impact Reserve. Focusing on revenue, within housing and well-being, there is a forecast net pressure of £411,000 in relation to temporary accommodation due to an increase in the number of people being supported. The number of households in temporary accommodation as at the end of March was 178, which has increased to 240 at the end of September. There are a range of contributing factors, including rising rents, no fault evictions as private landlords exit the rental market, and a shortage of available accommodation. The launch of the new development in Ascot Road over the next few weeks has been factored into this forecast. Net investment property income is expected to be lower than budget by £239,000, primarily due to the timing of lettings of units at Aspire Watford Business Park. The favourable variance of £800,000 within strategic finance is a combination of savings on borrowing costs and an increased return on investments due to higher than estimated cash balances and interest rates having remained at higher levels than forecast. All other forecast variances are listed in the report. As noted in the Financial Monitoring Report 23-24, year-end full council on 16th of July, the final reserves position was subject to change following the finalisation of accounting entries in relation to the council's investment in Croxley Business Park. These entries are now completed and have resulted in an additional drawdown from the Croxley Park Reserve of £458,000. The council has allowed 4% of pay inflation in 24-25. This is still being reviewed by some unions and their members. There is a risk that the final award will be higher, which could result in both an in-year budget pressure and an ongoing cost pressure in future years. Bad debt write-off of £319,769.09 is requested in relation to rental arrears for 4 tenants at Croxley Business Park. In 3 cases, the tenants entered administration in the last 3 years and have now surrendered their leases. In the 4th case, the tenant did not formally enter administration, but were on the brink of insolvency and appointed a practitioner to enter into an agreement for early surrender of the lease. It is common practice for landlords to not immediately require surrender of the lease when a tenant falls into administration, as the landlord becomes liable for business rates and related service charges. A bad debt provision was set aside for this debt in 23-24 and was taken into account in the final earmarked reserve position. Therefore, the write-off will not impact the revenue position in 24-25. I ask Council to approve the recommendations of the Q1 Financial Monitoring Report.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Jenny, I understand you second. Would you like to speak?
I reserve my right, Chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak? Councillor Bell, I could just see a light on without your hand up. You can speak.
You want the light in the hand?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman. Just on the temporary accommodation, the 411,000, I think it was, is this all due to, obviously, if everything goes ahead with the Ascot Tower and obviously that will all be solved, or are we looking at other developments that have to come on track to, if you like, sort that out?
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Can I respond to the Chairwoman?
Go ahead, please.
The £411,000 includes the Ascot Road development. There's 119 new properties that have now come online, which, after a lot of work with officers, has created some capacity within the temporary accommodation market. We also are working really hard on an affordable housing investment strategy, which will inform us on how to use the computed sums to better invest into suitable accommodation to tackle the crisis in temporary accommodation that we're experiencing in our town. But the housing team is working incredibly hard to ensure that people remain in a secure accommodation and trying to reduce the reliance on temporary accommodation for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair. Can you confirm how many Watford residents who are on the temporary list are housed or at the moment are in temporary accommodation outside Watford, maybe in Luton or other areas?
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
There are currently 96 households that are housed outside of the borough in temporary accommodation.
And do you know how much that's costing us? 96?
Bell, can I just stop you there? I don't think this is part of the agenda
Well,
today.
to do with temporary accommodation. So
Yeah, but
Councillor Bell, I'm more than happy to meet with you afterwards and go through the exact details of the temporary accommodation register, which I have a full.
Is that okay? And then you can send your answer. Thank you for understanding. Mayor Peter?
I was just going to talk about temporary accommodation. Councillor Pattinson covered. I obviously agree with everything she said. I just think it's worthwhile us being aware as a council that we have a national housing crisis, and our officers are doing a brilliant job. But there are some councils. I was talking to the leader of Eastbourne Council a few weeks ago. Eastbourne Council spends £6 million on temporary accommodation. 49 pence out of every pound that that council spends is on temporary accommodation. So we've got some councils that have got a huge, London boroughs that have got thousands of people in temporary accommodation. So it's a big challenge. Jenny is doing a great job as the portfolio holder. Officers are working really hard. Today, the property they were talking about, Ascot Road, it was all finally over the line. That's 119 more properties that people will be able to move into that are currently in temporary accommodation. But I think it's important that all of us play our part and recognise that we've got far too many families in temporary accommodation. We've got people outside of the borough, but we're united in making sure that we've got the best possible response in the town.
Councillor Jenny, I know you were answering question, but did you want to speak?
I think I've said everything I need to say and agree with everything that the Mayor said too.
Thank you. Does the council agree the recommendation on page 8? Kennedy, do you want to really sum up?
I could sum up, but I think I've already said it all.
I think so too.
I think
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Does the council agree the recommendation on page 85 of the pack to approve the advice revised capital investment program? All those in favor? Anyone against? Any abstain? I think that's carried. Thank you. Annual report of fee and charges, item 13. A report of Chief Finance Officer has been circulated with the agenda, including the minutes of finance scrutiny and cabinet. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's the same. You go again. Sorry. I invite Councillor Kennedy to move the recommendation. I just think you're doing too much now. I'm thinking, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I agree with you. I am doing too much. This paper sets out the charging policy for 25-26 to be adopted by Council and the proposed changes to the Council schedule of fees and charges. I'm certain all members have gone through the charging policy, so I'm not going to go through it in detail. It's very similar, more or less exactly the same as the current policy. In general, a charge will be levied for all discretionary services on the principle the user pays and the need to cover the costs of the service. The decision of whether to charge for a specific service will be subject to an assessment of the impact of charging on the delivery of our priorities. It is right that we reduce fees and charges for those on low incomes, and concessions will be available to residents on identified income-related benefits and discounts. It is proposed to adopt new fees and charges for the majority of services from the 1st of January 2025. There are some exceptions to this, which are noted in the report. The proposed increases to fees and charges, combined with estimates of activity, are expected to generate additional income of around £58,000 in 25-26. This compares to an assumed increase in income of £75,000 factored into the MTFS approved in January 24, approved in January 25, approved in January 24, which was based on average increase of 3% across core discretionary income streams. The reduced income of £17,000 will be factored into the proposed budgets for 25-26, which will be considered by Council in January 2025. In general, the basis for the increase to fees and charges has been to apply a 2% increase reflecting CPI in April 2024. There are some exceptions to this, and I will detail the main ones. Firstly, in terms of burials, for those residents that have lived outside the borough for greater than 60 months, the fee will be going up by 10%. This policy is to try to reduce demand for burial plots from residents living outside the borough to maintain burial plots for residents living in the borough. Garden waste fees are going up from £55 to £60. This is due to the income received not being sufficient to cover the costs of the service. Whilst considering these fees, we need to remember that not all households in Watford have gardens, and this increase reflects the policy of the user pays. This increase also keeps Watford's charges in line with the average of similar boroughs in the area. Second garden waste bin charges for households are remaining the same. Bulky waste collections are also going up from £50 to £55. Currently, upholstered items are charged at £50 per item. The new rate will be £55, but will cover the collection of up to 3 upholstered items. Again, the increase is due to the income received not covering the costs of the service. All councils in Hertfordshire follow different pricing structures for bulky collections. Setting Watford's at £55 for 3 electrical items will leave us at the average position, and we expect other councils to increase their charges too for the coming year. In conclusion, I feel these revised charges are consistent to the council's fees and charges policy, and as far as possible, reflecting the policy of the user pays, and is already broadly reflected in the MPFS for 25-26. I ask council to approve this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Tim, I understand you're second.
Thank you very much. I'd like to second this one and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Nigel, go ahead, please.
Thank
You're
you,
down to
Chairwoman.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman. Just on the a couple of things. I mean, the £5 rise in the green bin charge again, obviously now 55 to 60. You say this is going up because there's not been enough money coming in on this. Is there not going to be a point where it's just not going to be worth it? You're going to have to keep putting it up every time. I'm assuming. Obviously, a lot of those people are, saying that they're having to pay the council tax twice. They're already paying the council tax, then they're paying this on top of it. So just thinking about the justification for that. Bulky waste item, well, we have an argument about that every year, but the rise again in controlled parking zone charges, obviously this is going to affect again a lot of people now. Most people, I think, many people live in Callowland, most of the people in Central, and I think people in certainly in West Watford. Quite a hefty charge. But is there no thought about holding off on that, or at least not increasing it in the same way, or maybe some other kind of scheme of charging that we could look at on here? Because obviously it is quite difficult for a lot of people at the moment now, especially, and obviously, as I say, even in places like Callan where you're close to the junction station now, there's many more places that have had CPZ scheme introduced from when it obviously first came in back in 97, 95, because of the football. I just wondered if you've looked at any other way of doing it rather than just this same increasing the charge every year. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Khan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. There's things that Nigel has mentioned, but what I'd like to just focus upon is there is a little bit of confusion by this new approach of changing fees mid-year. So you've got some fees that will go up 1st of January 2025. You've got some fees that will go up in April 2025. You'll have some fees that will go up, like the green bin fee, in about September 2025. And you've got licence fees that might go up also, but all those not in the scope of this in April 2025. So what you've got now is the traditional way was that in the new financial year, residents were aware that fees were going to go up at a particular time. They were able to budget these the ways that which these fees are changed. It becomes confusing for residents as well. So just to bear that in mind, I would prefer, that the council goes back to the previous way, which it puts fees and charges within the big debate of the budget setting debate, and then the fees are then incorporated within a financial year rather than as January, April, and whatever. So it becomes slightly more difficult when you are preparing budgets or looking at alternative budgets, when you've got these fees and charges coming in at mid-year, January, April, August, a little bit in September, and then you come back again. So that's my point on this particular thing. I think Nigel's mentioned some of the other issues that were concerns regarding this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan, that you didn't repeat what Nigel said. Thank you. Next, Councillor Mark, thank you. Councillor Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman. I just thought I would put my hand up just to answer one of the questions from the opposition about particularly parking charges. I mean, of course, that sits within my portfolio. Of course, we want to limit the increase of these charges. I just want to make two broad points. First and foremost, we want to make sure we pay a good wage to our contractors. That's something I'm sure and I hope Labour will support. But secondly, I just want to put this into perspective. This is a £3 increase on the first permit. I'm sure you're both listening carefully. And if you compare that to other council authorities in our local area, not least, for example, Labour-run Stevenage, we're proposing a new fee of £34 for the first permit. The first permit in Stevenage, for example, is £52. So we're doing our very best to keep these fees as low as possible while also delivering a high-quality service. And I think it's really important we do benchmark ourselves against councils in the local area. So Hartsmere is 35, Harrow is 65, Stevenage, like I said, is £52 for that first permit. So I just want to provide that context to council and for residents listening around. I'd also just note this has gone to multiple different committees before coming here, and we're now hearing those questions at council. So I think there's something interesting to be said about that. Thank you.
Mayor Peter, did you want to speak?
It was just very, I mean, Ian covered most of what I was going to say, but just one other further point, I think, in relation to control parking. I know that lots of us spend a lot of time out talking to residents in areas live with control parking, and actually the comment that I get more often, rather than about the price of the permit, is actually about the level of enforcement. That what residents are saying is they want more attendants out there enforcing the controlled parking. The reason that we're increasing the fee is actually so that we can increase the number of enforcement officers to make sure that people follow the rules, which I think will be welcomed by our residents. But Councillor Stokes was totally right to compare it to Labour-run Stevenage, and to also point out that the increase that we're proposing works out, I think, at less than £6 per week to park your car in one of those zones. I think residents are prepared to pay less than £6 a week more if that means that there'll be more enforcement, and so they're more able to possibly park on their own street.
Thank you, Mayor Peter. Councillor Tim, would you like to speak?
Yep, thank you very much. Most of what I was going to say has been said, sort of thing. But yeah, I was just going to come back on the £5 green bin charge. I'm going to go all the way back to the Resources Waste Strategy of 2018, when they consulted the government, to all councils, all interested parties. One of their recommendations was to actually keep green waste bins free of charge. When that was basically sponsored by DEFRA, when DEFRA then took that argument to the people, the councils all objected to it, saying, government, you've taken out so many grants away from us that we can't afford to do this. This is why we're doing it. And they basically, and therefore DEFRA went to the Exchequer. Will you finance the councils to pay for free of charge green bins, make it statutory duty? The Exchequer said, no, we haven't got the finances. But no, we have got a new government in charge now. So yes, the ball's thrown into your area. And I just wondered, are you going to fund local government to the necessary levels to provide these services? That's in your ball court. Waiting for the budget coming up, waiting for the local government settlement. People voted for change.
Thank you, Councillor Tim. Councillor Kennedy, would you like to sum up?
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman. With the proposed fees and charges, we have taken in most cases to implement a 2% increase, even though inflation is forecast to increase from Q4 2024. Where charges are set at 2%, where charges are set above 2%, this is mainly due to the costs not currently being covered by income. It is important that as far as possible, the user pays so that the service is not being subsidised by residents not using the service. I think the points in terms of the green bin are broadly being covered. I think one of the points that Councillor Bell has made is that could costs go up year on year? One of the things that we've got to make certain is that we do cover the cost of the service from the income. As I previously stated, our charges are going to be in line with the average of other councils in the area. The vast majority of residents have continued with the service after we made the increase in last year's full council. The number that have declined has been the number decided not to have the service has been very, very marginal. Picking on the point from Councillor Seif about the timing of increases. I think the first thing I would like to say is that and I think this point has already been made by Councillor Ian, we've gone through multiple layers of review, and one of the things that Councillor Seif said is that scrutiny, finance scrutiny, audit scrutiny is very, very important. Councillor Seif is the chair of Finance Scrutiny Committee, and those points were not raised in that meeting. In terms of the...
Chair, can I make a personal statement correction, please?
Councillor Asif, can you please sit down for a minute and let him finish, please? Let him finish.
No, but it's in accordance
Can
with
you
the
please sit
Constitution.
down and let him finish, please?
I'd ask,
and I'll call you after.
I'd ask
Let him
monetary
finish.
minister.
You can make it personal.
Yeah,
Okay.
let him finish first.
Finish here personal.
Finish and then you.
Okay.
No. In terms of the timing of increases, I don't think residents will get confused by the timing of increases. We're not planning or proposing any further changes to what currently is in place. Finally, I ask Council to approve the fees and charges policy and fees to be applied as per the report.
Thank you. Councillor Asif, make your point, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask the Council to withdraw that remark. I have stated it in finance scrutiny about the changes of policy and changes of timings of policy. He's probably not present in those meetings, but I have said it. So I'd like him to withdraw that remark, which is untrue.
Please bear with me. Let me seek advice on that. Okay, so my first thing would be, is that in the minutes? And would you be happy to withdraw if it's not in the minutes at that time? I mean... It's a bit of confusion going on here because I think we understand that there's no recommendation made from Councillor Asif. Well, I'm not going to waste time on this, so I'm going to ask Councillor Kennedy, if you want to withdraw, you withdraw. It's totally down to you. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm sure we can take this out of tonight's meeting. Would you be happy for this to be taken out of the meeting? As we have 5 motions.
No, because it's one of integrity. He made a point accusing me of not raising it within the thing, and he made a party political point trying to negate my role within that. I'm saying to him, I have made it, perhaps not as a recommendation, but that's not the point he made. He needs to withdraw in a public statement like now.
Okay, I'm just going to ask Hannah Donny as the Chief Financial Officer to intervene.
Thank you, Chair. Just to set out my recollection of the conversation at Finance Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Khan did make reference to the changing in timetable, but didn't ask the committee to make a formal recommendation on that point and reference the discussion that would then come up at full council. I don't think that was documented in the minutes, so.
Okay, so on this ground, Councillor Khan, what have you got to say?
To take it to the Standards Committee.
Okay, let's move on and then Councillor Khan will act after. Thank you. Sorry, my mic was off. Let's do the vote. Does the council agree on 3 recommendations as set out on page 126 of the council pack to approve the draft charging policy, to approve the proposal fee and charges, to propose delegate authority of the executive director, place to set charges for market license fee in consultation with the portfolio holder? All in favor? Any against? Any abstain? Councillor Bell, one abstain. That's been carried. Thank you. Neighborhood Locality Fund Annual Report 2023-2024. A report from Democratic Service has been circulated with the agenda. I invite Councillor Kennedy to move the recommendation, please.
I will take members through the annual report for the neighbourhood locality funds. It includes information of the overall budget and types of projects the wards have supported during 23-24. Wards spent a combined total of £33,782.61, equating to 94% of the overall budget. Wards spent within a range of 60 to 100% of the budget available to them, an average of £2,815 each. The full breakdown of expenditure by ward is available on the council's website. The different types of expenditure have been reviewed to identify the most popular, including the amount spent and the percentage this equated to in relation to the overall budget. This can be found in the report. In accordance with the recommendations put forward by the Neighbourhood Locality Fund Working Group, a new application form is in the final stages of being devised to facilitate online submissions, enabling residents to apply directly after discussion with one of the local ward councillors. It is expected to be launched later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Glenn, I understand you're seconding.
Yes, correct. I would like to second the motion and reserve my rights.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Nigel? Anyone else? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Khan, I see. Anyone else? Councillor Nigel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, obviously the obvious thing is about the central being able to carry forward. I thought in the past we couldn't do that, but can we have the exact reasons why they were able to carry forward? Thank you.
Councillor Khan, go ahead and speak.
Yeah, with the legates of 2,500, there's a little bit of misunderstanding about that. So, yes, so the skips we budgeted with that, but we should not budgeted with that, and hence 500 under.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy, would you like to sum up? Oh, sorry, did you, apology? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm happy to respond to Councillor Bell's question regards the central request. It was alongside with the Hertfordshire Council, we worked to make sure that antisocial behaviour happening one of the streets, it's fully eliminated, and therefore we requested to carry on some budget so we can participate in funding to make sure that the residents feel safe and feel better.
Thank you, Councillor Ugar. Councillor Kennedy, you'd like to sum up?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Does the council agree one recommendation as set out on page 173 of the council pack to note the annual report? All who in favour? That's been carried. I don't need to ask the other two questions. Thank you. Members, we have got 5 motions to go through. And as you know, what time is it? Can I ask one of my colleagues? It's now 8:30. So can we vote to say that I won't be going up until 10:30 or past 10:30 to ask for extra time? So we need to please support and keep your speech less for me so we can get through this quicker. Would everyone agree with this and vote on this, please? Anyone against?
So we're going at 10:30.
No, we're going to finish at 10 or earlier. So one person has disagreed. I think this has been carried.
Go on to 10:30.
Yeah. Well, 10:30, I hope we can finish before 10:30. 10:30. Okay, 10:30 Constitution, we go for that, but I hope we can finish before that. Is that agreed? Thank you. Five motion has been received. We would like to go through, I don't need to repeat all that. I had already said that. Motion 1, rental bill. Thank you, Sahel. Anyone else need to excuse themselves? Any other tenant in the hall? Renters, landlords. We all tenants, aren't we? Any other landlords? Any other landlord, please remove yourself from the room. Take responsibility.
No. Other landlords don't have to exclude themselves. We already covered it. It's just
Just
so
what?
Don't worry, it's fine. It's just
Okay, we just seek advice and you don't have to. Thank you. The first motion has been proposed by Councillor Nigel and second by Councillor Khan. Details are contained in the agenda. I am now inviting Councillor Nigel to move the motion.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This council welcomes the new Labour government's Renters' Rights Bill, first introduced on the 11th of September, and it was back in the Commons last Wednesday, 9th of October, for its second reading in Parliament. The reforms in the bill are designed to offer greater protection for our tenants, and the most notable feature is the ending of Section 21, better known to most of us here, and more importantly, our residents, as no-fault evictions. The last government never completed their equivalent bill. It's been left to the new Labour government to include it to bring much needed rights to our tenants and tip the balance back towards them, especially so important when the economy and the cost of living are still issues and renters need more long-term stability in their housing situation. The bill introduces measures to end rental bidding wars by landlords and letting agents and reforming grounds for possession. I can say more about that later, but the bill aims to address issues in the private rented sector, including those connected to assured short-hold tenancies. Assured short-hold tenancies offer no long-term security of tenure, and housing insecurity can have a range of negative impacts on tenants, physical and mental health, as we know, finances and employment prospects, and ability to form support networks in their community. The lack of security, of course, means tenants can feel unable to enforce their rights in relation to repairs and to challenge unreasonable rent increases. The private rented sector has a higher proportion of properties that do not meet standards than other housing tenures. And of course, private landlords in England are not required to belong to a redress scheme. Although local authorities have extensive powers to address poor property conditions and management standards in the private rented sector, there is evidence nationally of low and inconsistent levels of enforcement between authorities. A lack of robust data and information on the sector is recognised as a key barrier to effective enforcement action. Now, the government would like to get this through into law by next summer, 2025, and it's been welcomed by housing charity Shelter, in there to quote, as a watershed moment. And the campaigning organisation Generation Rent said this bill is an important step forward for our rights, which should be celebrated. The chief executive of the homeless charity Crisis, Matt Downey, said it would provide tenants with long overdue security and protection against homelessness. We have the chance with this motion to put ourselves on the side of so many of our most vulnerable residents, and I urge support for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, I understand your second. You want to speak?
Yes, Chair, I'll speak now. And I stand in support of Councillor Bell's motion welcoming the new government's a renters' rights bill. This bill is more than just a piece of legislation. It's a lifeline for many tenants, including those right here in Watford. In my own casework, I'm sure, and many of my fellow councillors' casework, I've worked with residents facing sudden shock and disruption of no-fault evictions under Section 21. I've met parents worried about uprooting their children from schools, individuals who have had to scramble to find alternative accommodation in an already strained rental market, and elderly residents anxious about their future. Time and again, they've shared the uncertainty and stress of knowing that they could lose their homes with little warning, often simply because their landlord chose to increase rents or sell their property. So this bill, by abolishing these unfair no-fault evictions, to step forward towards fairness and stability. It means residents will no longer live with that constant worry of notice on the doorstep that can turn their lives upside down, and also will help with our temporary accommodation problems that we have with some people being made homeless. This bill, once passed, will bring real peace of mind to renters. I see month after month. People contribute so much to our community here in Watford. So, in conclusion, by welcoming this bill, we're standing with residents of Watford, saying that we see them, we understand their struggles, we support their right to safe, stable housing. I urge my fellow councillors to join me in embracing this legislation and supporting this motion. It's a much needed change that will protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asif. Do any member wish to move any amendments to this motion? If so, raise your hand. Councillor Jenny.
Thank you, Chairwoman. The Liberal Democrat Group wish to table some amendments to the proposed motion that I know we've already shared with our Labour colleagues, to more reflect the reality of the impact of the implementation of this bill to a council already dealing with an incredibly challenging housing situation. Local authorities like Watford already have extensive powers to address poor property conditions and management standards in the private rental sector, and the introduction of this bill will hopefully strengthen these powers and improve associated fine regimes, etc. But the new government have stated that new enforcement measures will be funded, and there will be also scope to raise funding from fees and penalties. However, as with all new legislation and regimes, it's not just financial resources.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Councillor Nigel, do you accept the amendment?
Yeah, we accept the amendment. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak on the motion? Great, I like that. The motion, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, we certainly do accept the amendment, I understand that. Looking at what you're saying on there, remains concerned about the resources, as you say, and funding. And quite perfectly happy, that the Mayor should write to the Minister of State for Housing Planning, confirm adequate funding. In fact, although they would like to get the bill through as quickly as possible in law by next summer, they are still talking to tenants groups, housing charities, and they're also talking to landlords groups. Obviously, landlords at first weren't happy, but they are coming around. I think there's lots of, so that will hopefully help. So yeah, we're happy to go along with that. Thank you.
Councillor Sam, you were to second the amendment, so you want to do
I'm
that
second.
now and speak?
I'll reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Can't reserve, you have to speak because we're going to move on to the vote.
Yeah, so I encourage all my colleagues to vote on this, and so we can move on, and everyone's happy with the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? That's been carried. That's it. Thank you, sir. The second motion has been proposed by Councillor Khan and second by Councillor Nigel. Full details are contained in the agenda. I now invite Councillor Steve to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairwoman. Okay. Apologies. Chair, colleagues, members of the public who may be seeing this, today I bring forward a motion that isn't just another agenda item for me, it's personal. I was born and raised here in Watford, a town I'm deeply proud of to call home. And whenever I go out of town, I always promote how well and how great this town is. Growing up, I remember the beautiful blends of culture, languages and beliefs around me and how natural it felt to share spaces and experiences with people from all walks of life. That experience taught me that while we may come from different backgrounds, we are all part of the same community bound by shared values of respect and kindness. This diversity is now woven into Watford's very fabric. According to the 2021 census, 44% of residents identify as Christians, 13% as Muslim, 8.2% as Hindu, while there's other identities as Buddhist, Jewish, Sikh within our own community, and even about 25% have no religious affiliation at all. These aren't just numbers, they represent individuals with each unique beliefs and experiences. They are a reminder of the importance of making sure that all voices and all values are included in our council's approach to public services. I am a person of faith, like many of you may be here, and I am also deeply respect those who hold other beliefs, and I understand those who have none. Faith is a source of strength. It's also about mutual understanding. And that's what the Watford Faith Covenant would bring to life in our town. This covenant would formalise our commitment to work with all communities, faith-based and secular, to ensure everyone feels represented and respected in how we serve our residents. A project like this is particularly important for our young people. They're growing up in a Watford that's even more diverse than when I was young, and their perspectives are crucial. I want them to have a voice in this process and a stake in Watford's future. So when young people see a commitment to inclusion, they feel encouraged to contribute to the community and shape society they are inheriting. So through this covenant, we'll establish a faith covenant working group. And before we continue, I'm more than happy to accept the amendments by the Liberal Democrats. It refines it, it focuses it, and it's absolutely fine. We're a platform where faith leaders, young people, community representatives can come together to shape our future. This group will help us draft a covenant that respects everyone's values and promotes cooperation, so we can continue building a Watford that's inclusive, welcoming and resilient. So, for example, following the example of Herts County Council, which had successfully implemented a similar covenant, and some of the county councillors here were part of that and worked with that, Watford can become a model for community partnership. It is already, but we want to enhance that further. We can lead this way in showing how local government and diverse communities can work together to foster understanding. So by passing this motion, we're reaffirming our commitment to a Watford that respects all faiths and those with none. A Watford where everyone feels valued and where our diversity is celebrated as a source of strength. Thank you, and I sincerely hope I can count on your support for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Asif. Councillor Nigel, would you like to speak?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Okay. Does any member wish to move any amendment to this motion? If so, can you indicate now by raising your hand? Councillor Aga, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Am I right to think that the Councillor Khan is willing to accept the amendments proposed by us, which I'm really pleased to hear it. It's lovely once again to see across the chamber the recognition of our community, and what is really more important to highlight that what the convent saying about the importance of fostering the relationship with the faith groups, implementing the strategies for engaging with the faith communities, at the same time encourage the faith groups and their members to actively participating in reshaping the Watford, but also sharing the good practice, the learning opportunities is already happening in Watford. So the all amendments, what we would like to highlight that we very happy to look at it, but we believe that we should invite all leaders across the town to one table and the councillors across the party, so we can share and hear their voices, and those ones should decide if the convent should be taken up for it, or perhaps we are happy with the settings what we have right now, which I'm very proud to say that our voluntary sector commissioning framework working excellently well, and we have a wonderful relationship and a partnership across the town. And we also many times where the colleagues from the Labour Party group and the Lib Dem can meet together when it comes to the faith, when it comes to non-faith also, and talking about the importance, especially during the last couple of months in the summertime, when that strong leadership and the communication between the roles, what we share in the town hall, it's heard and visible to join and get together to discuss the importance of the communities. So thank you very much. And I hope that we're all in agreement to carry on the good work for the community. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Councillor Aga. So Councillor Khan agreed the amendment. So now we're going to ask Amanda to second. And would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to second the amendment and reserve my right to speak. I have no need to.
Councillor Khan, would you like to sum up?
There may be other speakers and they want to talk about it be a substantive motion, Chairwoman.
Right.
And, so that's now debated.
Right. So anyone else need to? Mark Hutman, Mark Watkin, you have a. Okay, sorry, there's a confusion here. So Mark, you need to speak. Okay. Sorry. So Mark W. want to speak. Mayor Peter. Matt? Anyone else? Okay, have I got everybody? Mark W., Mayor Taylor, and Matt. Is that correct? Okay, so Mark, go ahead, please.
Madam Chairman, I think I should declare that I chair the county's Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, which is the statutory body which oversees the delivery of religious education across all Hertfordshire schools. And I absolutely welcome the idea of a faith covenant. The struggles I've had, and I'm beginning to move towards a more positive view, is that I believe this should be coming from the faith groups up to us rather than us going down to the faith groups. Councillor Carnes referred to the Hertfordshire County Council for covenant. That actually came through from Hertfordshire's interfaith group, and they brought it to the County Council, and it was adopted there. And there was a wonderful meeting where I don't know how many different faiths were present and signed the covenant, and it sits proudly in County Hall here as an evidence of it. That is my real concern. I absolutely share all the points that Councillor Khan has made about this community. It's a marvellous community. I am hugely proud of all the different faiths. I love going on the pilgrimage. We have the celebrations event that is based on the MCC in my own church, St Michael Angels. So I really do welcome that. I think I will support this, but I had expressed concerns to my group, so I felt it was only honourable that I should state this here now, that I would love to see greater involvement. I have seen greater involvement when Watford Interfaith Association before this matter came to this chamber. But believe me, I celebrate the fact that we do have a multiple faith here, and I will be supporting this, but I think it's important that we do make sure that all the faiths feel that they are part of it and not that we're imposing upon them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Mayor Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman. I mean, I agree with Mark that it's important that it's from the bottom up. I think what the amendment seeks to do is actually to work on a cross-party basis with organisations such as the Watford Interfaith Association and faith groups. I think we've also got to consider the role of organisations in the town that aren't faith communities, but where faith plays a big part. So, for example, in housing, YMCA, One YMCA and New Hope are both organisations that have got a Christian foundation. Would they be impacted by this? There are some issues to actually work through and to think about and to make sure we get it right. We've got a fantastic multicultural, lots of different faiths in the town and people of no faith, and this is definitely something to consider, but I think we've got to just think through some of the practicalities and the details of how it looks and make sure that it works well. Mark mentioned his church. I know that lots of us visit all different faiths very frequently. The vicar that's just finished at Mark's church, Father Jeff, was a key person in the Watford Interfaith Association for many, many years, and the town is blessed to have people like him playing an active role. It's right that the council works with them, but I think that the faith covenant is something to consider. But as I say, there are issues about, for example, if you have a faith covenant board, how does that interact with the existing Watford Interfaith Association? So there are some practical things I think to look at, and that's what I hope that the councillors on the task and finish group from open scrutiny would consider.
Thank you, Mayor Peter. Can I invite Councillor Bell to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to second this now amended motion and take on all the points that people have made. I'd like to obviously, first of all, point out the fact that Councillor Khan has proposed this motion. Obviously, he's shown leadership on this. As we know, he's put forward that meeting, a very important meeting where obviously the Mayor was invited, the new MP, all the different religious leaders at the Watford Mosque back in, I think it was August July, obviously, when we had those danger of riots in Watford and we didn't have them. So that was very good that he organised that. But obviously, it hasn't just come from that. I take on the points that the Mayor has said about, if you like, the YMCA and New Hope, obviously they're Christian organisations, but I don't see why they should be negatively impacted. That they should be, that should also come into it and discuss with them. And if it encourages our faith groups to come forward, then that's a positive thing. So I'll take on board what Councillor Watkins said and his experience on SACRA and everything else. That's obviously very important. But overall, I think it's this has obviously got something running, and I think it is that it's important that if we end up getting the actual covenant, the faith covenant here through this, then I think it's all good and it's all positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. I just make an apology. I did forget Matt. So, Councillor Matt, I'm going to ask you to speak now.
That's okay, Chair, no problem at all. Thank you very much for calling me. Very, very briefly, just to speak in support of this amended motion as will be, I think it is very important to remember the fear that many communities had while those riots were happening, those racist riots were happening during the summer. You know, I was part of that same meeting that Councillor Khan was at, and obviously Mayor Taylor was at, amongst others. And the council does have a very special role to be able to play in facilitating and galvanising that kind of activity. Absolutely take on board the practical points that have been made and the need to be able to ensure that it works coherently, and absolutely take on board the point that it's all faiths and none as well. But yeah, very much in support of this. Thank you.
Now going to ask Councillor Amanda to speak.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd just like to say Overview and Scrutiny Committee Task and Finish Group would be absolutely perfect conduit for this discussion. We can ensure we then give all faith groups a formal say around their opinions and commitments to working with the council and be a part of the conversation around the proposals, rather than the council enforcing this without due consultation and/or consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Amanda. I'm going to ask Councillor Asif to exercise your rights if you want to.
Yeah, thank you. It was never my intention, and thank you for correcting willing to impose this. It wasn't meant to be an imposition. It was meant to be a facilitating, because the council can facilitate through its, it is the council of Watford, it represents Watford, so irrespective. And again, I do want to make it party political, or sectarian, or anything like that. It's inclusive. And one of the key things I mentioned in my speech was we need to get young people involved and get young involved, get their views, and because ultimately they're going to take it forward. We might not be here in a few, for 40, 50, 60 years, but it needs to be a run ahead. So that was one of the key things about it. So thank you for that. I too am on the SACRA. I just want to end some of the things at that meeting that we had with different faith leaders. Although it was at the mosque, they had Jews, Buddhists, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs. They had all faiths, people with non-faith as well. One of the key things they were talking about at the SACRA was educating the new generation. So it's so important that I think part of that education, I feel, is also this covenant. We're working together in an inclusive way. Thank you.
Right, so Councillor Asif accept the amendment, so we're going to ask members to vote on the amendment, please. Anyone in favour? Yes, everyone. That's been carried, thank you. Motion 3, proactive flood prevention and resident safety campaign. The next motion has been proposed by Councillor Khan and second by Councillor Nigel. Full details are contained in the agenda. I now invite Councillor Khan to move the motion. You have 7 minutes, but you just need 5, aren't you?
No, yeah, I'm not going to take 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Now we're heading towards County Council this morning. Some of us had a bit of experience this morning at the County Council. So I bring this motion before you with a sort of sense of urgency. Over recent weeks, and even months, heavy rainfall has brought on serious repeated flooding across parts of Watford, affecting areas. For myself, in my patch, Balmoral Road to Dorman's Road, Longsbury, and other areas. I'm sure many of you also had that issue. Many of you know residents of these neighbourhoods, of these areas that have been directly impacted. It never used to happen before. All of a sudden, now water is coming into their drives and into their areas. First-hand distress and worry about what comes with water flooding into their homes and damaging property. So this motion is about our residents, and it's how we as representatives respond to that. So listening to residents describe the anxiety that they feel each time a storm is forecast, as they wonder if their home will be hold against the flooding. I've seen photos, spoken to families, like many of you, and visited those affected areas to understand the extent of the damage. Many cases, the flooding isn't just inconvenient, it's financially devastating. I've seen some carpets ruined, front doors damaged as a consequence. And we know Herts County Council is a designated flood authority and responsible for the upkeep of our gullies and drains. However, as our residents will confirm, we've seen all too clearly these efforts are currently insufficient. Blocked or poorly maintained drains mean water has nowhere to go, so it floods. It's no longer enough to simply react to flooding after it happens. We need to be proactive, and we need to have a stronger partnership. So this motion calls for a formal letter from the Mayor to the leader of Herts County Council, urging the County Council to commit to a proactive, preventative approach to flooding, but also recognises the need for us here at Watford Borough Council to contribute for our own actions, work in partnership. We've got to work in partnership with them. To credit, our street cleaners and deep clean programme are essential, actually, where we work in partnership with the County Council to alleviate some of these flood prevention mentioned. So removing of leaves when they're clearing and debris, and when those deep cleans happen, we do clean some of those gullies. There's a real difference. It comes from the comprehensive coordinated work on a larger scale, and that's what this motion is about. It seeks a coordinated public campaign delivered in partnership with Herts County Council and other relevant authorities to help residents understand what they can do to protect their homes. Simple measures like strategic placement of sandbags. Were we aware that sandbags could be provided? Can't they be applied to residents? It's mixed messaging sometimes. Or installing flood guards can make a big difference. As representatives, we can guide our residents to resources and practical advice. For those listening today, I would strongly urge all residents who are affected by flooding to contact Herts Highways or the local county council and let them know of any specific flood issues on their street or the councillors here by sharing your experiences, because residents play an important role in bringing about real solutions. By listening to their concerns, hearing their concerns, and working together, we can ensure that the right solutions are given to those particular areas. So, Madam Chairwoman, this motion represents our commitment as a council, people of Watford, to protect them, their homes and their well-being. Let's not wait for the next storm to take action. Let's stand together, safeguard Watford and provide our residents with the security they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asif. Councillor Nigel, understand your second. Would you like to second and speak?
I second this motion and reserve my right to speak.
Does any member wish to move the amendment to this motion? Indicate your hand now. No. Then Councillor Carr. You want to speak? Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead, please. And you, Ian. Anybody else? Let's start writing the names. So, Mark, Ian. Anyone else? Okay, Mark, go ahead, please.
Thanks for bringing this motion forward. I'd like to just say I support it. Like you and thousands of others, I found myself unable to use roads, pavements, like subways, and there's one just by the library actually that floods, and then people have to kind of take their life into their own hands to kind of cross the road here to get to the town hall or into the town centre. We're seeing this ever more frequently in Watford. As heavy rain and flooding becomes the norm. And I was actually reading earlier this year in the Financial Times, and others reported that in the UK we've experienced our wettest 18 months since records began in 1836. This is like continuing trend. We're seeing sporting events cancelled, devastated agricultural produce, and also social events being unreachable. So, for example, I was supposed to be playing football a few weeks ago, and on my way to Power League, the roads were cut off, and the football was cancelled because the staff couldn't get into work either, because the roads were inaccessible. We've seen tube lines flooded and trains cancelled, and people's kind of commutes being disrupted. So, this is a Watford problem, but it's also a national and international problem as well, as we see increasingly normal life being having to grind in standstill because of extreme weather events. And UK Met Office data shows that central and eastern England are actually the most affected areas, increasing the need for HCC to take action. Research also shows that winters are getting warmer and wetter as the atmosphere heats up, strengthening its capacity to hold water and triggering torrential downpours. 2024, 2022, 2020, 2016 and 2014 were the warmest and wettest winters on record. This shows that this is a long-term trend with weather conditions that will become more extreme if we carry on burning fossil fuels such as gas and oil at record levels. Our sewers, roads and wider infrastructure has not been built to withstand ever more extreme weather. We cannot afford to go on as we are. Either we'll have to spend vast sums on patching up our infrastructure or accelerate our investment in a fairer, more sustainable and greener future. So let's be the generation who pulls the handbrake on runaway climate change. Please support this motion.
Councillor Ian.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I will just be brief. I just wanted to take the advantage of this motion to just highlight some of the things we are doing. I know that Councillor Khan made reference to close working with HC. We do have that. I just thought it's useful to highlight some of the examples. But some of the Watford Borough Council initiatives first. So obviously we have the Restoring River Colne project. That's reconnecting backwaters to that river. That does actually slightly increase flood capacity. Of course, there's lots to do. The wetlands in Cassiobury Park, a wonderful preserve that we're introducing there for a rare habitat. That's also increasing flood capacity in the local area too. So this council is not idle, but absolutely right that we raise this and continue to champion action here. We're working closely with highways on highway interventions that we choose to lead on as a council as well to make sure that drainage is considered. And of course, we have close working relationship with HCCSP, the climate change panel of the joint boroughs across the area, where county also sits on it too. I would also say, and I'm happy to work with colleagues and indeed our new MP who's joined us, that we need to highlight that the EA doesn't properly funded and resourced. They're the ones who manage things like FRAPs, and we have seen that they're really stretched beyond capacity. So that's just a point I wanted to reference. I didn't write an amendment, but I'm completely supportive of your motion. And I would also just say that the issue of local authority finance will also come up. I'm really looking forward to the budget on the 30th. We need to make sure we properly fund upper tier authorities to make the sheer scale of interventions that need to come forward. But thanks again for bringing the motion. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Ian. Councillor Nigel, would you like to speak? We already asked you that previously and you reserved, so now I'm asking if you want to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, I'm just actually pleased that everyone's come together on this again. Obviously, we had the debate, as county councillors know, this morning in county council, and the key thing is because of the extra rain that we've got at the moment and the last few days, the last weeks, and hearing the figures data from Councillor Hoffman there, we thought it important to bring this here, that it's not just about us working with the flood authority, which is county council, but obviously you've got Thames Water, which is often a problem. The problem I've had recently, talking about my patch with Lawrence Haynes, next to Lawrence Haynes School and Vicarage Road, it turns out that it's not necessarily the borough, it's not the county. The county have done their bit, but Thames Water, it's getting them to come out. And again, the Environment Agency, a lot of the time the county will say, oh, well, it's not us, it's the Environment Agency. So it's trying to get all those to work together. So if we can do that, that's great. You talk about, obviously, the things you're doing, sustainability, obviously planting more trees, and obviously overall we're going to help. I know the county has led on this, but obviously you've done work here, which we respect, and that's fine. And other things that was mentioned this morning, which I think someone mentioned about growth as well. Clearly, we get more growth, which we all want, which we as a government want, but other people want as well. We get more buildings. We need to make sure that those buildings, when the plans come to development control, or even before that they're properly looked at. And when it comes to flooding aspect, whether it's the floodplain or how the buildings are designed. So that's a key thing. And I say, I'm sure that's what not just members of development control, but others and planners will be thinking about when it comes to flooding and the climate change, how things have changed anyway, and that we need to take that into account. So, but overall, I'm pleased that people have come together again on this again, and it's important that this goes through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Asif, would you like to exercise your rights?
Yeah, very briefly, just thank you for the support on that. I think for me, one of the key aspects of this is to make sure that our residents know how to protect their home from flooding. It's something new, but newer for areas like urban areas like Watford, and it's something which they're going to get more and more being able to do that, and also what resources are available for them, and that's working together and explaining the comms with the different agencies, what they can do to protect their homes and what they can do to prevent things like this from, or minimise the impact going forward. I think that's really important for me, which is one of the highlights of this motion. I thank everyone for supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Asif. The full motion is set out in the pack on page 4 to 5, inclusive. All those in favour? That's been carried. Thank you. Motion 4, new hospital programme. The motion has been proposed by Councillor Ian and second by Councillor Peter. Oh, they're not to go, so that's full details are contained in the agenda. I now invite Councillor Ian to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. I know some of my colleagues have had to leave for conflict of interest because they work at the hospital. So first I just want to start by saying government finances are in a dire place, and that's something we understand and recognise after years of Conservative mismanagement. With that in mind, we've seen the amendment proposed by the Labour group, but we actually feel like it's covered in the text of the primary motion. What I would say though is that the doom and gloom that's been coming out for the last few weeks and months from this government is not what we need. We need a bold vision to commit to investing in critical infrastructure in this country. In Parliament, there are alternatives that have been suggested about how to raise capital to build these pieces of key infrastructure. I understand finances have a challenge, but I would note that investment in infrastructure, critical infrastructure, not least health, always pays for itself, and that's something we really should be backing as a council. Government's decided, unfortunately, despite explicit commitments during the general election campaign, to drag the Watford General Hospital into the wider review of the 40 new hospitals programme. Understand that the Conservatives left that programme in a complete state. We have no disagreement on that point. However, residents have received firm commitments from this incoming government during the election campaign that this hospital would be funded, and every minute, every day of a delay is a cause to be incredibly angry. Politics and government is a choice, and choices have already been made to fund a whole host of other activities, yet we're still waiting for lots of information about even levelling up funds, but also this critical programme. We've also seen, to quote the government, a deafening silence on social care from the government. Our health service needs action, not words, and I look forward to the October budget in earnest. I also want to use this speech to just set out some of the timeline around this Watford General Hospital. It's not like it's an empty project. So let's go back. May 2007, public consultation on a health campus. May 2008, outline permission to redevelopment hospital was granted, battling through a bunch of highways concerns. February 2012, new funding secured to support the hospital access road, which was done in coordination with the local council and the redevelopment plans that we had there. That's where opposition actually started to that new build, because we had to make use of land in that area. Watford Health Campus was Health Campus LLP was founded in 2013. This is a joint venture between Keir and Watford Council, working with the trust to deliver housing, to deliver the access road and enable the hospital site. A huge amount of work going on since then. 2016 November, Tom Sawyer Way, named after a local war veteran, was opened, preparing the site and improving access to Watford Hospital. 2018. We then see the cancellation of the access plans in the form of the MLX that was meant to be supporting that local area. We need to remember that there has been so many oppositions to this bill, so many challenges that we've been working to overcome, and work by this council and work by this trust have really led on this programme. In July 2019, West Hertfordshire Hospitals concluded its Future Hospitals Services, let me get this right, Future of Hospitals Services Strategic Outline case, again reiterating their commitment to the Watford General Hospital. 22, new car park developed by the council. May 22, Trust approves the redevelopment plan. May 23, new hospital programme finally adopted, but no money awarded. I got a bit close there, Chair, sorry. In December 2023, land purchase for the area for the hospital. This is not a a project that needs review. This is a project that needs funding. We have waited long enough. We've had to battle through too much, and we're now being let down again. Despite the cancellation of the MLX and the subsequent, I would say, half-truths in the general election campaign, we need to see this hospital funded. Any day of delay is an outrage. We had explicit commitments from this new Labour administration. This hospital would be funded. We have to see it funded now. So it does beg a belief we have to make this point, but let's remind the government that we have a long legacy and a strong project here in Watford. We've had explicit commitments that we should hold this government to. Any delay is a delay, and that was not what was promised. We need this hospital funded, and we need it funded now. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ian. Councillor Mayor Peter Taylor, I understand you second. Would you want to second and speak?
I'll second and reserve my right to speak. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Okay. Hello. So any, that's the speak.
Yeah, you're right. So you just want to speak? Yeah. So.
Yeah. So Ian want to. So Sahel want to speak, and who else want to speak?
We'll go to Nigel first and do the amendment.
You go to the amendment.
Yeah.
Right. Councillor Nigel.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just, I know Councillor Stotsby mentioned it, but it's just really, to us, just making it clear, you've got on the council believes the 6 points. This is only to point 4. So obviously, as I say, the Labour Party and new local MP, Matt's here, pledged to rebuild Watford General Hospital during the general election. This commitment still stands, despite the new government and Chancellor finding that the previous government's new hospital programme was not properly costed, and the money, I'm afraid, wasn't there. The review and any delay is totally down to the mendacious claims of the last Conservative government, and the Labour government are acting responsibly in making sure any financial commitments add up. It's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. So now we can ask Asif to second the amendment. Would you like to?
I'll reserve my right
to speak. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else need to speak? Sahel, you needed to speak, didn't you? And Ian? Anyone else? And Matt? Anyone else? Thank you. So we're going to invite, should we do you first, Matt, to speak? It's okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I shall rise to speak to the amendment. Yeah, let's address the final points of the motion initially. So the trust should be fully supported. I absolutely agree 100%. I'm meeting with the trust on an extremely regular basis. I'm meeting with the Department of Health and Social Care to lobby the case for the hospital on a very regular basis. I have another meeting with them this week to do the very same again. The plans are ready to execute. Yeah, it's very ready in terms of the hospital schemes and those that are amongst the 40 that were originally part of the new hospitals programme. Obviously, there's those hospitals that have got RAC that have been identified, and obviously there's a prioritisation thing going on there. The election pledge remains in place. I mean, you're absolutely correct. I stood up during that election campaign and supported the commitment to rebuild the hospital. Wes Streeting stood up during the election campaign and made the commitment to rebuild the hospital. What we didn't know was that the claims by Dean Russell as MP that the money was all there and allocated were just simply untrue. There is a massive black hole in the finances, at the heart of the nation's finances, that has got to be dealt with. And that is the reason that the new hospitals programme has been put into review. The new hospitals programme has not been cancelled. It doesn't mean that Watford Hospital is not going to be built. We still absolutely have a commitment to do it. But when you're told and assured by the previous government that there is a pot of money available to do so, our expectation is that of course we can make that commitment to just carry on seamlessly because the money has been allocated and it's there. But if it isn't there, we can't do that. No, nobody more than me wants to see this hospital built, particularly because I made that commitment during the general election campaign. So let's make no mistake about who is responsible for the funding gap and therefore the delay in this hospital programme. It's the last Conservative government. You have incidences taking place that, for example, obviously Dean was quoting his 1.2 billion, yet Gagan Mahindra, the MP for South West Hertfordshire, got up only last week and said it was 400 million. They are not clear on what the financial commitment is, nor indeed the status of the availability of that money. I would also say it is, I take the point that's being made. We all want to see that hospital built tomorrow. The election campaign pledge wasn't, we will build it within 4 weeks of winning the general election, which is when the statement was made on the 29th of July about the gap in the finances. And I would also point out that Liberal Democrat MPs, there's a big increase in Liberal Democrat MPs that are in Parliament at the moment. And, they absolutely recognise the financial legacy that has been left to the government as well. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. Obviously, they are doing so too. And clearly, it's not just the hospital here; it's the 40 hospitals in the new hospitals programme, and as Councillor Stotesbury alluded to as well, other projects in addition to the hospital programme that have had to go into review, including projects that were that are part way through from previously committed levelling up money. So in terms of the prioritisation and proceeding with the rebuild, yeah, absolutely. As soon as we can, I'm sure we will. I mean, genuinely, as I say, in regular contact with the trust about lobbying their case. I mean, you mentioned in the motion the impact in terms of finances and additional cost of further delay. 100%. I absolutely see that. I mean, one thing that COVID taught us across the board, for housing projects and all the rest of it, is that supply chain costs only go up. And you do not want to be delaying unnecessarily when it comes to building those projects, because obviously the sooner you can do it, the closer you're going to be to the budget that you've originally allocated. So, I'm very supportive of all that. A couple of other points, though. On the doom and gloom, I would say, talking about the reality of the financial crisis that is in those at the heart of government is one thing, but there are a host of positive initiatives that we have been talking about as well, in terms of the investment that's being brought into the country, in terms of the housing reforms, some of which has been touched on in a motion earlier today, in terms of the environment, very important for lots of people in Watford and in Watford Council. Those initiatives are just absolutely superb. The initiatives around public transport, taking the railways back into public ownership, liberalising what can happen with bus services so that local communities can have the bus services that they want rather than just the ones that Arriva consider to be profitable. And then finally, there's a little bit of, posturing going on here with some of the history in the timeline. I mean, we've discussed this and visited it many times in this council, but I would certainly say to you, some of the missing parts of your history timeline are 2008. The hospital was agreed under Andy Burnham's.
Councillor Matt, your time is up.
Then I shall merely conclude to say that there is more to the history timeline that has been revealed.
Thank you. Councillor, speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, Watford General Hospital means so much to many of us, our families and our residents, having used the excellent clinical care services at the hospital for many, many years. All political parties have campaigned for many years for better and improved facilities at the hospital since I can remember. After many sustained political campaigns across all political parties, the last government in their new hospital programme earmarked Watford General as a new hospital being built at that site. Both Lib Dem and the Labour Party fought strong campaigns against neighbouring high-profile politicians and stakeholders to ensure that West Arts Hospital had its primary clinical care services at its site in Watford. This Liberal Democrat Council, under the leadership of the previous mayor and the current mayor, have taken concrete and significant steps to ensure that the vision of the new hospital in Watford becomes a firm reality. From the provision of an access road Thomas Sawyer Way to the clearing land offered against opposition for providing a multi-storey car park for patients and staff, to granting the outline planning permission in 2023 for a new hospital to be built, and approving detailed plans provided by the NHS Trust. We just need the green light from this Labour government. Matt Tremaine, our new MP, no more dithering, no more delays. Actions speak louder than words. In a tweet on the 4th of June 2024, 4 weeks before the general election, our elected MP said, "I'm delighted to say that Labour has announced that Watford Hospital will be rebuilt under a Labour government. The chaos and dithering can finally come to an end. Vote Labour on the 4th of July for a new hospital." Matt, this is the time for action, not words. We recognise the difficulties of the financial pressure of the government, but it was the Labour Party's commitment not to raise taxes and to say we're going to work within the finances that we've got. You made that promise to the electorate. You made that promise to the people of Watford in your election campaign. Please deliver for the people of Watford. Just concluding remarks. Was this another Labour's false promises, or can we trust them to deliver for Watford? I'll leave that as a question mark for members. With the lack of decision on the £16 million funding levelling up fund for Watford, as agreed by the last government, it is of real concern that this government has not yet given the green light to our hospital, and our MP must do all in his power to ensure Watford General Hospital gets the promised funding immediately, not delay now in this budget that's coming up. Thank you.
Councillor Matt, will you please? Thank you. Mayor Peter, would you like to speak?
Always happy to speak. Thank you, Chairman. I mean, just to second the motion. I think the key thing is actually about our MP just asked the question, how would you fund it? So there's been lots of debate. I'm not going to go over all the history. There's been a clear commitment from Labour. The Labour Party, when you govern, you make choices. The Labour Party has made a decision to have a fiscal rule that says that debt as a proportion of GDP must fall in 5 years' time. That's a decision that they've made. Because they've made that decision, it's quite a fiscally conservative position to take. It then means you can't borrow to invest. Gordon Brown had a policy, his golden rule was borrow to invest. If the current Labour government followed Gordon Brown's approach, they could borrow to invest in Watford General. But Labour have chosen not to do it. So it's your party's decision which has then led to this review, which is leading to this delay. So I take it, we've had years and years and years of Councillor Tremaine coming here and lecturing us about the decisions the coalition made and how terrible it was and how we should be feeling really guilty. He's now a member of a government that's making decisions that is delaying investment in health. And we all know that the longer the delay happens, the more costs will go up, the more patients will suffer, the more staff will have to work in inadequate conditions. And so it's their decision. It's their decision. Are they going to borrow to invest, like Gordon Brown would have done, and like we think they should? He talks about Liberal Democrat MPs. Daisy Cooper, a fantastic Liberal Democrat MP in Hertfordshire, has made it very clear the government needs to get on and deliver the investment in Watford General. It's right for St Albans residents, just as it's right for Watford residents. So he asks us how it will be done. You've chosen those fiscal rules. You need to change your fiscal rules, deliver the funding, and build the hospital.
Well said. Thank you, Mayor Peter. Councillor Asif, would you like to speak?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. So I rise in support of the amended motion and the motion for us. As someone with deep personal connections to Watford General, I was born there. My children were born there. My parents received their care there. In fact, they both passed away at this hospital. So this hospital is not only a cornerstone of our local healthcare, but a place for life-changing moments for countless families across Watford. And we were indeed promised a new hospital on this site, so we must see this through. Not just for today, but for future generations. The plans are drawn, the trust is ready, and the council is supportive. And I didn't know Matt was going to be here, but even our Matt, who's working every moment and stretching every sinew to secure the necessary funding. His dedication to this cause reflects the urgency felt across our community. We know that investing in healthcare today will pay dividends in health and productivity tomorrow, and Watford deserves no less. So I wanted to change the tone of the debate because the previous government, the hospital programme, made promises and failed to deliver on it, leaving us in other communities high and dry, with 40 new hospitals promised. Yet so few were delivered, if any. They left a gap in both infrastructure and in trust. So promising something so vital without ensuring funding was not just negligence, it was a betrayal of the public's confidence. Now, the economic situation that the Labour government inherited is daunting. The public sector investment, especially in healthcare, is not a luxury, it's an urgent necessity. Delays will only drive up costs, and as many have mentioned, this is where I want to change the tone of this debate. The path to better health services needs to be set. Party politics must end, and working together as councillors, not just in Watford, but neighbouring councillors, the members of Parliament of all parties, to work together is so important. Something above any party politics, which I mentioned right at the beginning of my speech. This hospital means so much to residents of Watford, and to play as a party political football in this crucial time.
Oh,
So what are you doing then? We've seen you these, but
Okay, all right. Something above party politics, and securing our hospital is one of them. Party politics hasn't worked so far, so perhaps let's try something different and working together to secure it. It's our duty to work together to ensure Watford General becomes the hospital that all of us have long waited for it to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asif. Councillor Nigel, do you want to sum up on the original motion? Okay, so Ian?
I would love to. Okay, let's just kick off with the point that Councillor Carnes has tried to make about party politics. I will note, and I'm glad that our new MP has joined us for this debate, I think your first intervention on this in the House of Commons was to make a party political point on the new hospital and hark back to the Liberal Democrat and Conservative coalition. So maybe you should put that in your own pocket on that point. I made the point, and so did the Mayor, that to govern is to make choices, right? We had this discussion earlier, but I'm going to reiterate it. The choice that was made was to delay the capital programme. We all knew that the country's finances were in a dire state, a devastating state. Let's reframe this, perhaps. Are you suggesting that going into the election campaign, when you had made these explicit commitments to our residents, in debates that you and I had together, when you said that there wasn't going to be a review of the capital programme in answer to our previous MP's points, you're telling us that the incoming Labour government were surprised when they found out that the governments of Liz Truss and Boris Johnson had left a financial black hole? What a ridiculous farce. You knew that, but you made the commitments nonetheless, and now you are dithering when you promised not to. 100 days it's been, and we still have no firm answer. That is outrageous when we were expecting the hospital to be committed to immediately based on the campaign. The capital review is a choice. You are delaying, it is a choice. The Mayor has made points about how we've proposed to change fiscal rules to allow you to borrow so you can get on with it. That is a choice. I want to see you stand up in Parliament for this hospital, not hark back to decisions years and years ago that have never been founded as far as I've been inside this council. They've never been actually explained explicitly and clearly in this council. We have a long legacy as a Watford Council, which is what we're talking about today, the role of Watford Council and the Trust and the joint venture to deliver this hospital, and calling on the government to recognise the work done and get the hell on with it. Please, colleagues, reject the amendment and approve the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ian. Can I invite member to vote on the amendment? If any, order, anyone in favour? The original motion is set out in the pack. We all know that, inclusive of the amendment, has been circulated. So now we're going to vote on the amendment. Anyone in favour? So it's 3 people vote on the amendment. 4. on the, sorry. So that's totally lost. The motion, the original motion. Anyone in favor? All in favor? That has been passed. Motion 5, winter fluid payment. The final motion has been proposed by Councillor Jenny and second by Councillor Annalisa. Full details are contained in the agenda. I now invite Councillor Jenny to move the motion.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'll be as quick as I can, although this is another crucially important issue. So, colleagues, I'm proposing this motion on behalf of the 88%, huge number, 88% of pensioners in Watford who are negatively affected by this seemingly cruel and rushed Labour policy. We note that the recent announcement to end universal winter fuel payments and restrict eligibility to only those in receipt of pension credits and a few other benefits. Although many people agree that winter fuel payments are not necessary, we are deeply concerned that many pensioners on lower middle incomes will now not receive any payments. Across England and Wales, the number of people eligible for winter fuel payments will fall by 10 million. From 11.4 million to only 1.5 million. In Watford, the number of pensioners affected by the change in eligibility criteria is 10,442. That means 88% of pensioners currently eligible for winter fuel payments will no longer be able to claim the payment from this winter onwards. Now, as we've had large discussions about this evening, we recognise the new government is struggling with the consequences of the decisions of the outgoing Conservative government. But really, should the burden of this financial crisis be carried by some of the most vulnerable in our society? Those with the broadest shoulders should carry a heavier burden, not pensioners, many of whom will find it very difficult this winter to heat their homes. There are more than 2 million pensioners living in poverty, and they have a tremendously difficult time during the cost of living crisis and dealing with record energy bills that have just increased again and eye-watering food costs. There are better ways to tackle fuel poverty. The Liberal Democrats set out detailed proposals to do so, which would not plunge millions of pensioners further into such poverty. These proposals included launching an emergency home energy upgrade programme with free installation of heat pumps for low-income households, a social tariff for the most vulnerable to provide targeted energy discounts for vulnerable households. We acknowledge the dire economic situation the new government have inherited, yet we've heard warning calls from sector representatives, including Age UK, Disability Rights UK, and many pensioners themselves regarding the damage that this cut will cause. As the government tries to clear up the Conservative Party mess, they must ensure that it does not come at the expense of pensioners and their families who will struggle to heat their homes this winter. I hope you can support this motion and agree that it's not the right action to address the financial difficulties of this new government has found itself in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Councillor Annalisa, would you like to second and speak?
Yes, I second and I want to speak. I second the winter fuel allowance motion to support the pensioners in Watford who are now deeply concerned about the universal credit fuel payment and the restriction of eligibility. As Watford Borough Councillor, I have met pensioners who are considering leaving their homes they have lived in for years because they can no longer afford the energy bills to keep themselves warm. Their fears are valid. After years of hard work and contribute to the country, some of them even the Second World War, they feel abandoned by the government. Running the Watford Food Bank at the American Community Centre, I have witnessed a concerning increase in numbers of pensioners seeking for support over the last few months. They come in person, request delivery, trying to save shopping expenses as they can no longer afford nutritious meals, all while feeling compelled to save money for the energy bill. Sadly, some of them feel too ashamed to reach out to the food banks. How long it will take for us to hear of elderly people hospitalized because their homes were too cold or even worse? Thank you.
Thank you, Annalisa. Does any member wish to move any amendment to this motion? If so, can you indicate now by raising your hands? No. Councillor Jenny? Anyone else want to speak? Oh, okay, let's get the pen ready. Mayor Peter. Anyone else? Ian? Sahel? Anyone else? Nigel? No. Anyone else? I'm just going to make sure I don't miss anyone. So Mayor Peter, Councillor Ian, Councillor Sahel, and Councillor Nigel. Have I missed anyone? Okay, so let's start with Peter.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I will be brief because I'm conscious of time. I would just like to say, obviously, this is a decision that the government have made. One of the important things to remember is we all know now that people on pension credit are entitled to the winter fuel payment. The big difference between the winter fuel payment and pension credit is that everyone automatically got the winter fuel payment. You have to apply to get pension credit. And so there's 1,000 residents, pensioners estimated in Watford, who are entitled to the winter to pension credit who don't claim it. So they're now going to lose out on both the pension credit and on the winter fuel payment. And so I think it's really important for all of us, when we come across people who are struggling, who we think might be entitled to to the pension credit, that we encourage them. There's even more of an incentive for them to take that credit down. So I think it's, the citizens' advice and ourselves to encourage those pensioners on the lowest incomes to claim pension credit. The government have said, oh, we're going to take up of pension credit up. If they do that, then actually any savings, so-called, from this would be totally wiped out. The thing that happens as a consequence of this is that you've got a lot of people, the 2 million people that Age UK are talking about, who only just miss out on pension credit because of their household incomes just over that threshold. They then now don't get any pension credit, they don't get any winter fuel allowance. And so you've got a system where there's these huge cliff edges where suddenly, because you're earning 50p a week more than the threshold, you lose out on hundreds of pounds right across the year. Labour have created that system where pensioners on modest incomes are very concerned about the impacts. And so I think it's really important that we, in this motion, highlight how wrong it is, but of course now work with our communities to make sure that the very poorest do get pension credit. Lots of people, for various reasons, don't like to see themselves claiming something because they feel that, oh, I don't want to take charity, but this is money that people deserve, that they've earned. We need to make sure that they're claiming. And of course, we need to work really hard to make sure that the government, do tackle pensioner poverty, because it's a big issue. I've come across people, I'm sure all of you have, who are genuinely concerned about this, who are now saying they're going to be turning the heating off or right down. They're going to be reducing the amount that they spend on food. They're making really hard decisions. And so at a time when we see the energy price cap go up by 10%, at the same time to make this decision, it's going to have an impact on pensioners in Watford. And so it's right tonight we make our voice clear on this issue.
Thank you, Mayor Peter. I'm going to ask Sahel, even though it's Ian time, I've always missed him, so I'm going to compensate him.
So I feel very strongly about this motion. I fundamentally, on principle, disagree with the policy of the government to remove the universally applicability of winter fuel payments from some 11 million pensioners and instead using a new metric of qualification, that being a pensioner must be a recipient of pension credit to claim this winter fuel payment. Taking aside the significant holistic arguments which we haven't got time to address, I wanted to pick up one particular factor. The qualification threshold for pension credit is £11,400 per annum. Leaving aside those who may be just above the low financial threshold, as the Mayor has already said, and at the bottom end of the state pension, not eligible to claim with no other relief or financial support, and the impact on them withdrawing this vital support over the winter during the current cost of living crisis, I want to focus on those vulnerable pensioners who are below the threshold and who are not receiving pension credit at the present time. They have no support or any great awareness of the change. There are estimates from Age UK and the Citizens Advice Bureau nationally worrying that there are around 780,000 pensioners who are eligible but are not receiving pension credit. There's no reach for them. Some are ill, suffering with significant physical ill health, mental ill health. Many are not contactable. Some have dementia, and even if they could apply, how many will have the capacity to fill out a form from the government, which perhaps can be over 240 questions for pension credit form? The government estimates, and the most recent interview I heard from Lisa Nandy was that around 20,000 pensioners are on an uptake per month for pension credit. That is very optimistic, but even if that was accurate, that would mean it will take nearly 4 years before every eligible pensioner is able to get the benefit and then receive winter fuel payments. Awareness of this change and switching to pension credit is not widespread on a community level. This is a ill thought through, rushed policy by the government. Many thousands of pensioners, the poorest, many suffering with, as I said, ill health, will not be receiving winter fuel payments this winter, including here in Watford. This policy, as I said, is ill thought and not pragmatic. Community level creating of awareness via local councils and charitable and voluntary organisations working with pensioners is, in my view, fundamental, as has been highlighted by our motion. This government could have linked the qualification to the winter fuel payments recipients with people who are on attendance allowance or housing benefit to incorporate those under the 11,400 threshold, a lot more easier than the pension credit. So I fundamentally support this motion, and I strongly believe that the current government policy is wholly wrong, unjustifiable, both morally and ethically. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sahel. Councillor Ian?
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me.
No, I'm very happy to follow because he said what I was going to say really eloquently. So I'm just going to add some additional points. So just some context. You have to receive pension credit, you need to be earning less than 218 quid. This is in the motion, 280 quid a week. The living wage is 457 quid a week, right? Just for some context, the threshold that's being set here is incredibly low, and there will be people that fall between the cracks and are really, really badly impacted. Speaking of impacts, I understand that an impact assessment was not shared with our MPs before this bill was voted on. So Labour MPs have marched through a voting lobby to retract a benefit to pensioners in the midst of a cost of living crisis and a cost of fuel crisis without even seeing an impact assessment. What an absolute outrage. What an absolute outrage. Yeah. More than that, one of the justifications for removing this benefit was the public purse. Well, and as Councillor Zahel just pointed out, there's not enough people on pension credit. We need to work and continue to work as a council to get people on it. But if everyone eligible actually takes up pension credit, my understanding is it will actually cost the Exchequer more money than the winter fuel allowance. So we're in a situation where the whole thing fundamentally doesn't make sense. It's immoral, it's not implemented well, and it was wrong to vote on it. We should be supporting this amendment and sending that message back to government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ian. Councillor Nigel?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yeah, clearly it's a very difficult situation. We've had this black hole of 22 billion in our country's finances. Well, yeah, you heard it this morning, Councillor Watson. But yeah, it is a very difficult situation, and this is not something I would have wanted to see introduced. And I hope that and we're still waiting for the government. We're hoping that there's going to be more mitigating measures come forward in the lead up to the budget, and then also in the review after that. So we're hearing certain noises coming out. So I know lots of people are pressing on this. We need to, as you say in the motion, get across to as many pensioners as possible about pension credit and about claiming it. The government supports, obviously, the triple lock, which will mean that pensions from next April will go up to by £460. But I think the key thing is that we do need to try and make sure that we work together with Citizens Advice Bureau here and all the other groups here to try and get this out there to as many people as possible in the town. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Jenny, would you like to exercise your rights?
I will say something very, very, very short. I think thank you to my colleagues for supporting the motion. Just repeat the point that it shouldn't be the most vulnerable that burden the cost of the financial crisis here. And 2 days ago, the Watford Observer produced the list of warm spaces for people to go to who can't afford to heat their homes. Now, it's a testament to the community services and the voluntary services within our town that provide those warm spaces, but we should not be in a position where we're having to invite people to go somewhere where they can keep themselves warm through the winter. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the Citizens Advice Bureau for all of the work that they do around supporting people around the pension credit, and to ask my colleagues to ensure that we signpost people who are struggling in this dire situation to access the Watford Citizens Advice Bureau for advice on how to claim. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I have a right to this, but can we also thank the food banks for supporting these residents? Yeah. Inviting member to vote on each of the amendment, if any, in order. The full motion. So now we're going to do the full motion is in the pack, as you're aware. So all who in favor? Anyone against? Any abstain? That has been carried. Thank you. That concludes the meeting. Thank you, members.